Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to learn today about child labor laws. But before we do, make sure you have turned your paperwork in and your pay stubs. I need your paperwork from your boss. I need your paperwork from your parents, all signed, and your pay stubs. Get those turned in. That's really going to affect your grades. Okay, here's the sources of information in case you want to go back and take a look at any of the things that we've talked about. You might be interested in seeing if something that's happening at your work is legal or not legal. So what we're going to talk about is the good old days. To the good old days, right? Okay, let's take a look at the good old days. So back in the day, there was no child labor laws, so you could employ children, and it was a huge problem because number one, children weren't paid very much, and they were working in dangerous conditions. There was a lot of injuries and deaths for sure. And another bad part about it is children weren't going to school, so they weren't getting any sort of education. So there was no way out of these kind of dead-end jobs. The employers liked hiring children because they worked for really cheap and they were nimble and they could work in small spaces, and so they could get a lot of work done for cheap. But at any rate, ended up being a very bad situation. So there was a lot of reformers who tried to put a stop to it, and they had luck. Basically, after the Great Depression, they started having luck at it, and now we have child labor laws that prevent that from happening. So sometimes our government gets carried away and they pass laws that are silly and kind of are a burden on people, but I think the child labor laws, for the most part, make sense. Make sure that you're taking notes on all of this. Anything in red, write it down and answer it. Anything in green means it's time to do something. Okay, label the top of your paper labor laws and put your name at the top of your notes. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is go to Canvas. Okay, so you're going to go to Canvas, go to modules, go to the thing called Report of Child Labor Laws. You're going to click on this thing and you're going to grab this paper right here. So I get to that link, and basically what I want you to do is, so I want you to understand that if your boss is putting you in danger and breaking laws, not paying you, you could fill this out and you could get it dealt with if they won't change. But what I want you to do is go through it, and I want you to go towards the bottom and find out at section 4. Here's things that your boss has to do. So your boss has to pay you workers' compensation, or have workers' compensation insurance. So if you uh, so if you lose your job or whatever, you can get money and get paid. Um, so they have to have work permits, so on and so forth. So I'm not going to read through all of them, but I want you to read through this, and I want you to write down 15 things in your notes that could get your boss in trouble if he doesn't do it, and make sure and label those really well so I can find those easily. Okay. Okay, so a minor, so from here on out, we're going to be talking about minors versus people who aren't minors. A minor is a person who's under 18. If you're over 18, you're an adult. Um, there's another rule though. So if you're a high school graduate, so if you're like 16 or 17 and you graduated from high school, so you have no more of these work restrictions that we're going to talk about, except that you can't work uh, in an occupation prohibited to minors unless they've completed some training. But anyway, if you graduate from high school and you're still not 18, so a lot of these don't apply anymore. All right, let's keep moving. But a minor is somebody who's under 18. All right, write this down. A minor must attend school. You can't drop out of school, so if you don't go to school, you have to go to some sort of alt ed, like Casina, or independent study like Ted Bird. So you can't drop out of school. Write that down. Okay, all minors must have a work permit. There are a few minor exclusions, but for the most part, you have to have a work permit. Your boss has to have a work permit available for me. If I come to the work site and I want to see the work permit, they're supposed to have it available to me. This is important. Um, so you get to work with the school's permission, so basically my permission. So the school can take away your work permit and you can't work if you're under 18. The other deal is the work permits that we do give to you are they expire 5 days after the opening of school. So if you had a work permit last year and school has been in session for a week, it's no longer any good. And if you work for your parents, they have to get a work permit for you as well. Okay. Okay. There's a few things you do not need a work permit for. So if you're doing odd jobs, babysitting, yard work, you don't need to get a work permit for that. But even so, you're not allowed to do it during school hours. So if you're babysitting, you're not allowed to babysit during school hours. You're not allowed to do yard work during school hours. That's just kind of a standard. Okay, so here's the wages and overtime for minors. So minors must be paid at least the minimum wage, which is right now 10.50. So you need to double check on the internet, make sure that's current, because I'm going to probably be using the same PowerPoint for a long time. So you're not allowed to work overtime. Okay, so if you're under 18 and your boss is giving you overtime, that's not okay. You're not allowed to do that. Okay, so if you're over 18, if you get time and a half if you work anything over 8 hours in one day, and if you get over 12 hours in a day, then they have to start paying you double time, so 2 times your daily rate. Okay, but you can't, no overtime for minors. Okay, so here's how much and when can minors work. So when school is in, minors are only allowed to work 4 hours in a day, 8 hours if it's a non-school day. They can only work 48 hours per week total. So because you're WE students, you're allowed to work up to 8 hours a day on a school day. So there's some benefits to being in WE, work experience education. When school's not in session, it's the same for everybody: 8 hours per day, 48 hours per week max for minors. Here's when you can work. So you're only supposed to be able to work from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. You can work up to 12:30 on a non-school day, and then if you're in WE, you can always work up to 12:30. So you can read this for yourself. Just double check and make sure your boss isn't overworking you, working you times not allowed. Okay, there's penalty for working students too much. I put a list of all that if you're into it. Okay, you get after 4 hours you get a 10-minute break. Okay, and if you're working 5 hours, after 5 hours you get a 30-minute nutrition break. Write those down. If you're 18, so basically once you turn 18, all these labor laws don't apply to you anymore since you're no longer a minor. There's even when you turn 18, there's still certain things you can't do. You can't sell alcohol, and you can't transport hazardous material. But for the most part, all these laws, all the child labor laws do not apply to you once you turn 18 because you're no longer a minor. Okay, so here's things you can't do if you're 16 and 17. So if you're under 16, you can't do any manufacturing and machinery work. Okay. Okay, so now the rest is for 16 and 17-year-olds. You can't work with explosive radiation, wrecking. You can't do like tear cars and boats apart. You can't work in a logging or sawmill. You can't use power saws. You can't use forklifts, power-driven hoists. You can't manufacture brick and tile. Power brake machines. Power baking machines, so like mixers and things like that. Can't do metal forming, punching, shearing, meat slicing, processing. You can't be a miner, can't mine coal, can't do roofing, can't do demolition of houses, can't run a backhoe and do excavation work. You're not allowed to, your main job can't be driving a vehicle, so if you're doing delivery driving and you're under 18, that's not okay. Okay, so I'll flash these to you if you want to look at them. You don't have to look at them close. You can pause and read. Here's just some things you can't do if you're under 18. If you're super interested, you could take a look. Okay, here's your boss can't say if you're under 18, your boss can't send you to a bar, a saloon, a gambling house, house of prostitution, or anything else immoral. That's a misdemeanor if they do. So don't. If they ask you to go to a bar, they're not really supposed to have you do that. Okay, so here's some employer. Your boss has to do this. They have to keep your all work permits on file for inspection. Keep records. They have to have workers' compensation insurance for you if you get injured. You can get paid. They're supposed to have a written, or they have to have a written injury and illness prevention program, so they should be actively pursuing and making sure there's no diseases or injuries happening at their place of employment. They have to put if you notice there's posters up at your job. There's a bunch that are required. You can look at them if you want, but read this list. But there's a bunch of posters they have to put up so that people know their rights, and know that they're you know know the laws that the employer has to follow. Um, so if you're working for your parents, you have to do all the same things. All the same laws apply. Um, so except for if it's for agriculture, horticulture, viticulture, or domestic labor, which is like babysitting and house cleaning. So, but if you work for your parents, they have to follow the same laws. Okay. So I showed you here's that form. So if somebody's breaking a law, um, they're not paying you your minimum wage or so on and so forth, you can file a complaint. Okay. And so here's some summary charts. I'm going to flip through these really fast. Um, you can look at them if you want. I want to put it in here just in case somebody's really interested in doing some searching some things out, because if there's a problem, I want you guys to be safe and I want your bosses to follow the laws. So that's the whole point of this. Okay, so how to get your points? All right, I want you to use these notes and take the quiz in Canvas. I want you to turn these notes in after you take the quiz, and then I want you to go on to the work on discrimination. There's a packet on discrimination um, in Canvas, same kind of thing. I want you to find the PowerPoint, go through it, take the notes, do that if there's time. So finish this one, finish these notes, finish the quiz, and you can move on to discrimination. Ready, break.